Hello, viewer. How are you doing? Welcome to Full Record Jacket with Phil and Ben. And as we approach the end of May, we have to do it, don't we, Ben?
We've got to do it, dude.
We've got to bite the bullet and name our favourite
Albums. Three.
of 1994.
We have. Do you want to see a magic trick?
Go on.
You ready? You ready? Yeah.
Oh, wow. The light came on behind you and lit up Definitely Maybe.
It did light up Definitely Maybe. Yes, it has. Yeah, that is up there. Yeah.
Appropriate. I mean, who knows? Maybe that will be one of your three favourite albums of 1994.
I doubt it very much, Philster.
I wouldn't like to put a spoiler alert in there, but
No.
yeah, who knows? We can't possibly predict what would be in there, could we?
No.
So, how do we do this? I can't remember how we did it last time. Did we just go through 3 to 1?
I think we just go through each one. Now, I did listen to a few extra albums from 1994 this week. I listened to Weezer's Blue album.
Yeah.
Which I thought was just all one long song. It just didn't seem to, apart from Buddy Holly, which sort of is it the REM Monster album, which has got like the big track in it. It sort of the order. It just didn't seem. It didn't grip me, Philster. The
maybe you haven't heard it enough, though. Maybe
I need to go back and listen to it more. I was in the gym listening to it, so it's probably not gym music, but I did listen to a bit of Part Life by Blur. I did listen to that. Oh, I tell you what I did listen to.
Go on.
Steam, the E17 album from 1994. And all I can say is,
wow,
it's definitely a singles album. I mean, we're not going to go down the E17 wormhole like we have done before, but lyrically, I mean, obviously at the time, your two big artists of that genre, E17 and Take That. Gary Barlow is by far a better lyricist than Tony Mortimer, because some of the lyrics and that in that E17 album, just that some of the production was absolutely awful. There's one track, I can't remember if it was the latter half of the album. It's almost like it stops, but it doesn't know it stopped, if you know what I mean. It's like, oh, there's no editing. It just stops. It's like, well, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Was it Phil Spector said that in the 60s, the formula for a pop album was 2 hits and 8 pieces of
sugar.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Well, it
conforms to that tradition. Yeah,
it does follow that tradition. To be fair, and I also listened to. I think I listened to it last, but I listened to it again. The Second Coming by the Stone Roses.
Now that could have been a contender for me, you know, and I that was one of my albums that was just sort of hanging around outside. It's probably top 5 for me for that year. I always liked it. I know it became fashionable at the time, didn't it, to slag it off,
to diss it, yeah.
But I thought it was good, but not necessarily a groundbreaking, history-making album like the debut one, but an enjoyable one and pretty solid, and you can enjoy it lots of times. I thought, but there you go.
Yes, yeah. So I definitely got a bit more 1994 in. I don't think any of the albums will be making, or will they, my top 3. The Blur album wasn't bad. It's still a little bit cockneyfied for me.
Yeah,
but I do like the stories and the lyrics, if you know what I mean. I prefer latter day Blur to sort of, you know, post millennium Blur.
I know what you mean. I think perhaps I like Blur more after Beetlebum and Song 2 and
yeah. Well, that's things like I love Beetlebum. Beetlebum's a great song. I actually bought that and Song 2 on CD single.
Yeah, so I do like. I do. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's Part Life. Maybe it's because I got a bit fed up with some of the singles. But having said that, maybe
Girls and Boys is a great track, and I know they did it to sort of, you know, because all that sort of Euro dance pop was coming through, and that was their sort of like piss take out of it. But An End of a Century is a great track. That's a
Yeah.
great, Part Live, The Debt Collector. There are some really good tracks on it, but it just didn't. There's
London Loves. I always like that.
yeah,
Great.
yeah, yeah,
Love that.
and I think with Blur, those early Blur albums, there's definitely a, I'm not one for North and South divides, but the music that was coming out of the North, like the Stone Roses and all that sort of stuff, was an Oasis, all those sort of kind of encapsulated everybody. Whereas I find the Blur stuff, that early stuff, is just, if you lived in Essex, it was just made for you. If you know what I mean.
It was pretty successful, though. It has to
It
be said.
was, because people from Essex go everywhere. So,
Yeah. So yeah, I may have made a mistake not putting that in my top 3 because it was one of the best albums of the year. But maybe it could win the viewer vote.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but it just didn't do enough for me. It doesn't. I mean, Girls and Boys, those sort of thing, they take me back to that period, but I don't have any sort of, not an emotional connection with it, but I don't seem to have a connection with it. I don't connect with it. Whereas I like stuff I can connect with, Phil. So
Yeah. So what else was just outside your top 3?
well, if I go back through, the Biggie Smalls album was just outside. What's it called? Something yeah, I'll tell you what
Ready
it was
to
called.
Die.
Ready
The
to Die.
Notorious
Yeah.
B.I.G.
The Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds album, Let Love In.
Yeah.
I did enjoy that one. I am very much torn. No, it could still peak in, is the Green Day Ducky album. Because my third place at the moment is torn between 2 albums, and that is one of them. But yeah, no, I listened to quite a bit from 94, and obviously there was a lot of stuff. I listened to the Beck album. The Beck album is mental, and I'm not downplaying people's mental health or anything here, or making light of, various things. But if there was ever an album that the word schizophrenic could be literally put onto, that Beck album, is it Mellow Gold or whatever it is? That album is bonkers, absolutely bonkers, because it doesn't know where it's going. Beck must have recorded that and not had a clue. It must have been like is it Brian Eno, whatever it is, writing lyrics. He must have thrown the tracks up in the air and just gone, yeah, I'll just go. That was a bonkers album, and that could have got into my top 3. But I don't think it's an album that I could put on again and again and listen to. I think once I'd listened to it once, I'd be like, I think I need a 6-week holiday from you.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when your nephews or whatever come over for the weekend and you're like, oh God, I should never have bought 18 bags of Haribo and, and let them have some speed and 40 litres of full fat sugar Coca-Cola, because that's what that album was like. It was like literally like giving the Tasmanian devil sugar and then letting him loose in a glass factory. So it was a good album, but I think I'd need a week's holiday after listening to it. So, but do you want to know my top 3?
Let's have your top 3.
My top 3. Now I'm torn between Green Day's Ducky or Ducky, and
Ducky.
Coolio's It Takes a Thief. I'm very torn between these two very different albums. I really love the Green Day album, and I really love the Coolio album, but I've got to make a choice, haven't I, Phil? I'm going for Green Day.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'm going for Green Day because it's. I love the American Idiot album, and I remember buying Ducky, not at the time, sort of around 2001, 2002, and I thought, oh yeah, it's kind of like, yeah. But over time, I've listened to it more, and I do really love that. And I would say it's up there with American Idiot as Green Day's best bits of work. So Green Day pips Coolio. I do apologise, Coolio. Rest in peace, my brother. But yeah, that's my number 3, or my third one in. It's Green Day's Ducky. Number 2 is an album I discovered in a hammock, and from a genre of music I've only discovered properly in the last few years, and it is Portishead's Dummy album. What a great, great album that is. I just love everything about it, and why it took me to lockdown for me to discover that album is beyond me, because it's a masterpiece. That album is. It's beautiful, and you can put it on wherever you are and just be, yeah, that's good. Every track on that album is. I know people might say, "Oh, trip hop, it all sounds the same." Yeah, but rock and roll all really sounds the same, don't it? I mean, when you get it down to its nitty gritty, it's all just 3 chords and a bloke banging coconuts at the back. So, but yeah, Portishead Dummy is my number 2.
Number 2.
And are you ready for my number 1? From 1994.
I've been thinking all week, what could he be possibly having?
Yeah, it is. Are you ready? Suede's Dogman Star.
Yeah, okay. I don't really believe you, Ben.
No,
Sorry
no. It's definitely Maybe by the mighty Oasis. Come on! Let's be having it.
It's definitely Maybe.
It's definitely, Phil, is what it is. There's no maybe. It's definitely.
I thought you'd be showing us the image of it or something, or waving it around.
It's there. I'll tell you what. Hold on 1 second.
I thought you'd be waving it around like a football hooligan. He's going to be, by the looks of it. Here we go.
I'm back.
You must have enough copies of it lying around.
I have. I've got quite a few copies of it. I've got another one there, mate. Number 1.
Was that Liam's beer mat from the time?
Yeah, because it'd have like 8 beers on it. I ordered 1 and I ended up with 2 because the other one is obviously behind me here next to Noel Gallagher's moped. So, yeah. So that is my number 1 from 1994 because the album defined a generation. It defined music culture, pop culture, political culture. It started the march towards a cool 90s, I think. You know, I think it changed. It still inspires bands today. There's a lot of bands picking up guitars because of this album and the album that followed, which was released in 1995, which we're going to do next. Go figure. But I think it's just a genre-defining album. It's a generational defining album. So it is my number 1, Phil Stett. There's not a bad track on it. There's nothing I can say about it that hasn't been said before, apart from I think that is Ribena in that glass there. But a true masterpiece.
Yeah, if you put it on now, I'd enjoy it. So I certainly can't argue with that. And I think you've probably made, well, maybe your choice is the critics' choice, because I know Green Day are they quite highly regarded by critics? I think they are, aren't they? And I think, and Portishead was certainly a highly regarded album of that year. And
yeah, I've gone very mainstream, hasn't it?
Everybody well, I mean, no, because it's sort of a bit alternative. And Portishead, I remember everybody who was into sort of alternative or cool music at the time. So Portishead, you know, that was the cool thing. That was the cool album of that year. And the Oasis album, of course, was the cutting edge at that time. So yeah. Now I've gone for albums that I just have liked a lot and still like now. Okay.
D-Ream, did they have an album out then? Let Loose?
Well, things can get better than that. I've gone for like I say, I just enjoy these albums. I'm not saying they're the best albums of the year.
No, this is our favourite, Phil.
These are just our favourites.
Yeah.
Now, the one that just came outside,
Pardon?
Blur came just outside.
Hope it cleaned up.
And then the other one is by a band. Oh, this is ironic, this band, because this band have been performing recently on a tour in the US. And at the time this album came out, as was the case for probably all their albums for 20 years prior to that, they were considered to be quite an old band. and there was some people were saying, should they still be going? Are they going to retire anytime soon? They've been around for quite a while. You know who I'm talking about. We're talking about
The Rolling Stones.
Voodoo Lounge.
I'd forgotten all about Voodoo Lounge.
Which is a good album. The only downside with it is it's a little bit too long. So it's a little bit of a playlist album for me. I never listened to the whole thing. I sort of playlist things from it. And it was the Stones doing kind of doing their classic thing over again, really. It's an enjoyable album. They didn't really do anything different.
Well, Bridges to Babylon will be up there in my 97 list, I think. Because I love that album. That's one of my favourite Stones album. Yeah, it gets panned by critics.
Yeah, I know. And it comes fairly far down a lot of fans' lists as well. But I do like it as well. So
yeah.
So there we are. So anyway, at number 3, I've gone with an album that is completely bonkers and you might need to have a 6-week holiday after I show it to you.
Have you gone for it? It's Beck. Oh, that is literally a bag of wasps in a angry wasp cage.
I've always loved it though, because I heard Loser in a record shop in Ostend in Belgium in the spring of 94. And then ever since then, I kind of,
Well, Loser's probably one of the more mellow tracks on there.
Well, yeah, the rest of it is completely nuts.
It is.
There's all sorts of crazy stuff on
While
there.
I was listening to it, I was like, how do you describe, like, to the producer and that? Say, this is what I'm trying to make it sound like. I want it to sound like a car crash happening at the same time as angels are singing and there's a fire in an old folks' home.
Something like that. So that's what I went for. I found it very difficult actually to pick the third one. And if I did it again, I might put another one. But there you go. Now these
I think that Beck album is very good. I think it's, like I say, it's bonkers, and I need a holiday after listening to it. But it's very good. I'm
showing the discs. There's all these discs have got groovy images on the CDs. So this is one that I also gone with albums that I did actually buy at the time. I got into. And this one, well, I was already into the band, so I went out to buy this album. I remember buying this from Our Price, I think.
Our Price, yeah.
I remember looking at the sleeve and opening it, and it came in it had a orangey gold color.
Not black.
Can you remember what this album was?
Came out obviously in 94.
Yeah.
REM, Monster.
Yeah. Now, of course, this is an album that is kind of divisive because not all
REM... I found it hard work, didn't I?
Not all REM fans like this album. I think it does. You might need to have it grow on you a little bit, but this was where they sort of kind of went, well, I wouldn't say they went grunge because it's not really quite grungy, is it? It's a kind of, they went more rocking, and it's a kind of rocking that no one had ever quite heard before. It's a bit unusual. It doesn't sound quite like any other record.
Yeah, it's like rocking a haunted house, isn't it?
It's a weird one.
Yeah, it reminds a little bit of Nebraska by Bruce Springsteen.
But in more that
sort of feel. But yeah, a bit more up tempo.
I think there are some dark
Has it got what's the frequency Kenneth on there?
It starts with that.
Yeah, which completely lures you into a false sense of security of what the rest of the album has to offer going forward.
But I've always just sort of liked the vibe of it, and I've always liked I don't know, I just like it, but it's one of those things that is a bit Marmite for some people. But number 2 for me, REM and Monster.
Oh.
So what's number one? What's my number 1 album of 94? Now, I have to say, the guy who got me into this album predicted that I would have this as one of my albums of 94.
Was it me?
So, no.
Oh.
So it was one of my guitar heroes. So yeah, Matt, you were correct. So
Matty baby, how is he?
He's fine.
Good. So hi Matt, how you doing?
So what do you think? What is it?
1994. You've gone Beck. You've gone Stone. No, you've had 3.
No,
You've
because
had Beck.
I said the Stones were outside the top 3. I said that was just outside.
I thought that was in your top 3. Okay. Is that? It's not Neil Young, is it?
Well, he's got jeans and a t-shirt on account. Who else did you think it would be?
Neil Young. Yeah, but it was the jeans and the t-shirt that kind of gave it away to me.
It's "Sleeps with Angels" by Neil Young and Crazy Horse. They did a Reprise label on there.
Well, you got me into Neil Young when you first. No, was it you? Yeah, no. Noel Gallagher got me into him at Wembley when he played Hey Hey My My, and then you had the album, didn't you? The Crazy Horse album.
Yeah, that's probably how you got into
Rust Never Sleeps.
Interestingly, this album and the REM album have something in common because they both have songs which are supposedly influenced by the demise of Kurt Cobain.
No.
In fact, this album is supposedly, in a way, Neil Young's response to that. In a way, although it's quite a. If you know anything about Neil Young, but you're not listening to this album, this is kind of like a cross between, I would say, kind of a cross between After the Gold Rush and Tonight's the Night. It's got the darkness of Tonight's the Night, but the melodic side of After the Gold Rush, but in a Crazy Horse way. So there's more guitars and
mayhem
feedback, but it's a more of a slower, more mid-tempo album. It's not an up-tempo rocking album like Ragged Glory.
See, I did think about the Nirvana live MTV one because it is technically an album, but
it is, and I could have had that on mine, but I must admit I've not listened to it as much as some of the others, so I felt like I would have been kind of faking it to put it on my personal list.
Yeah. No,
although
that's good.
It is a great album.
I think we've got some good. I feel a little bit bad for Coolio not getting in.
Well, there you go. Poor old Coolio.
Maybe it just have to go away to his Gangster's Paradise, won't he? And chill out. So there's our 6, Philster, our 6 for 1994.
That's it, viewers. I'm sure you would have had a completely different trio of records, or, well, you might have had 1 or 2 in common with us, but, I think your trios would be different. So what 3 albums of 1994 would you pick? I have to say, by the way, Ben, the reason I didn't put the Oasis album in my top 3 is because I knew you'd have it in there. But otherwise, it probably
predictable?
It probably would have been in there.
There's no probably, Phil.
It would
definitely, maybe
it would have been in there.
Yeah.
I do like that album, of course. So yeah, there you go. That's it. We will look forward to reading your comments with interest, viewer. In the meantime, we will get ready for 1995. Thanks for watching. All the best.
Good.